Hey, Vision. Okay, it's good to see you this morning at Vision Church. And if I haven't met you yet, if you're new, I'm Matt Vanderbilt, lead pastor here at Vision, and we love what God's doing. Like Meg was talking about with the women's event, that was incredible. Coming next week with our kids and students, and then definitely December 19th and 20th, our first Christmas together as a church. We are seeing God do some tremendous things. And just singing that song, if you knew somebody who could do miracles, if you knew somebody who could make you smile, who could take care of you, who could truly do life-altering things, wouldn't you truly say, I just want to be with you? As I was saying that, I thought, really, Jesus, and what I've seen in Jesus as a person, that's who I want to be with. The person who we read about doing miracles, the person that we see doing miracles. And in fact, today, at least in a small way, I think you are going to hear about, see, and even taste a miracle here at Vision Church. So if that alone keeps you focused in all the way to the end, I want to make sure you don't miss the miracle today. But we've been talking about this series, Miraculous, and hopefully you got a takeaway card when you came in. It's our card we've designed to not only teach you on Sunday morning, but that you can dig into this during the week. And in fact, if you don't have one yet, just raise your hand up and we'll send somebody around to bring you one. Don't be embarrassed. We'll get you one, and this takeaway card is designed so that you can take today's message and unpack it more during the week. You can look through more of the verses. You can ask God to teach you something. So it's not Pastor Matt teaching you. It truly is God teaching you. And that's the good news here at Vision. God is doing that every week. Now, we started the series a couple weeks ago, Miraculous, and that word in itself almost has a mystery to it, almost an excitement to it, almost a I'm not sure to it. And the first week, we did something really strange. If you weren't here, we brought a boat up on stage. And I said, you could either be on the shoreline, or you could be in the boat, or you could be like the one guy who stepped out of the boat. And he saw God take his faith and do something that no one else had ever done. Now he didn't actually. Peter did in the Bible, where he walked on water. But when Henry did it up here, it symbolized the fact that we too can choose to either be on the shore or in the boat, or step out of the boat by our measure of faith. And the great thing is that God's power is the same throughout. And like we heard last week, not just God is powerful, God is power. So that when Henry stepped out of the boat, it wasn't his power doing it. It was God's power doing it. And last week, if you were here, Kevin Collick was sharing out of God's word, and he talked about raising the dead with Lazarus. Now, granted, he was a little more dynamic than me. Okay, I try to be dynamic. I was coaching flag football yesterday. I was dynamic on the sideline. I said, I'm going to be like Kevin Collick on the sideline. Come on, ref. And they looked at me and said, what? You're winning by 3 touchdowns. So, okay, I can relax. But Kevin was up here, and he did a marvelous job of sharing out of God's word about when God is doing a miracle, there's something happening. There's a process happening, not just in the miracle, but in us. That God wants to do something in us. And I love what Kevin shared about Jesus' tears in that story, that Jesus cares so much about us that he literally will weep because he cares for us. He'll weep because he wants to see something happen in us and because he loves us so much. So that's our first 2 weeks. Today, we're talking about a story that even if you've never been in church before, if you said, man, I'm new to church, or my friend invited me, or I've never been to church, you may have even heard this story. It's called Feeding the 5,000. It's where, if you've never even heard it, that Jesus did something with a little bit of food and fed a lot of people, and that doesn't seem possible. But this Bible that we look in teaches us some things sometimes that don't seem possible. And that's what's miraculous. So as we look at this today, this story about feeding not just 5,000, we'll see that literally it was more like 10 or 15,000. And you guys are going to get a little taste of that personally. Now with miracles, really, why do they matter? Because if you're like me, sometimes in life, if we're real, life gets a little mundane, where life just clicks along. And sometimes I think God does miracles to catch our attention, just to say, remember I'm out here. Remember that I'm the one who is supernatural and you're natural. He says life is not meant to be mundane. It's meant to be abundant. And then there's other times where we say, God, I'm in a mess. I'm in a bind, and I need help. I need a way out of this. In fact, has anybody felt that way this week at all? Like you were in a bind, you need some help. Hey, let's just do the finger thing again. If you were stressed this week, show me with fingers. 5 fingers if you had big stress this week. one finger, any multi-hands this week. Now, I'm looking over here at one of our middle schoolers. Middle school could not have been this stressful this week. Oh, unless you're teaching it. Unless you're teaching at middle school. Okay, I'll hear you on that one. Okay, so God does miracles sometimes to bust us out of the mundane, sometimes to work in a situation that seems impossible. And I say, God, thank you that you still do miracles. Even today, even in Gaston County, you do miracles. And we're going to look today in John chapter 6. Because this pattern I started talking about in week 1, simple pattern. There's a problem. There's somebody God's looking for with faith, and then God brings an answer. And sometimes we're over here in the problem, and we just say, God, just do something, do something. He says, I'm looking for somebody to do something through. There's a pattern. There's a problem. Something is wrong. I need somebody. And I say need. Really, God will work through somebody to do that, a person of faith. And then there's a miracle. There's an answer. We saw that in the boat. We saw that in Lazarus. We're going to see it today, this pattern. So today's bottom line question is simple. Is God enough? Is God enough? In your week coming up, when something goes wrong and you say, I need a miracle, I need help. Now, remember 2 songs ago, we just sang about Christ being enough. I know we did this with that, but is it really here where we say, God, you are enough? So our bottom line question, super simple this week, is God enough? When you're in high school and something's happening that said, there is no way anybody can help me or understand, is God enough to the high schooler, the middle schooler, to us? Is God enough? So John chapter 6. I love in the Gospels, there's 4 different books in the Bible that tell the story of Jesus' life. And sometimes you'll hear people say, well, Matt, they contradict each other. They have different details, different things. I say, that's not a contradiction. That strengthens the testimony of those writers that they saw different things and wrote about it in different ways so that we can take these Gospels and learn about this man named Jesus. So in John chapter 6, we're going to look at about 15 verses in there today that tell this story about feeding thousands of people in a way that is miraculous. Let me talk for a minute about the characters in the story. So first of all, we got Jesus. This guy who's walking on earth, saying he's the Son of God, doing miracles, or supposedly there was rumors of miracles. He's doing different things. This guy, Jesus, is on the scene. The second character or characters in the story, some of his disciples. The guys who said, we'll follow you around. We'll do the things you ask us to do most of the time. We'll believe in you most of the time, some of the time. He says, well, come on, follow me around. And I want you to say, we just want to be with you. So these guys are following him around. There's a couple in particular in the story. One of them, the guy's named Philip. The other guy's named Andrew. We're going to learn a bit about them in the story. And then the other characters, which we can't name them all because there was, I'm saying 10 to 15,000 of them. They said 5,000 men, but really, you come to an event like that, a large portion were married, a bunch of them got kids, 10 to 15,000 people in this story. And then there's 2 others. There's a boy, and there's one that's not mentioned, but it's his dad. And a lot of times I have people say to me, hey, man, I'm a visual learner. They almost apologize for it. And if you're being real for a minute, you're saying, actually, I'm pretty much a visual learner too. I like to see pictures. I like to see tangible things. So I will. I'll teach visually today where you'll get to kind of see this, maybe this boy and this dad, what it would have been like, particularly here in Gaston County. So those are some of our characters. So I'm going to tell this story, read through it, kind of like 5 pieces of a puzzle. Because hopefully you came in today with an expectancy that God was going to teach you something. And if you did, He's going to teach you something. 5 pieces of this puzzle about miracles. Now, in John chapter 6, we pick up verses 1 through 4, says, sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is, the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he'd performed by healing the sick. And up to this point, Jesus had been doing miracles, all kind of stuff that truly was bending the laws of nature, so it made sense that people wanted to come out and see this. So continue, verse 3 says, Jesus went up on a mountainside. He sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. Now, don't overlook that last verse, because sometimes when you read a story and you just want to get to the good stuff. I want to see, tell me what happened. This little phrase here, the Jewish Passover festival was near. If you know anything about the story of Jesus, he knows that when Passover comes this time, he's going to die. Nobody else knows that his story is like a couple chapters away from being done. So when you read this and it tells you Passover is coming soon, it means Jesus' life is coming to an end. So I always look at that and say, what he's teaching then is so important. This isn't like a year or two left in ministry, plenty of time. Let's talk about some light stuff. He's saying, guys, what I'm teaching you now is vital because you don't know it yet, but my life is about done. So don't miss that in that verse. Now, you continue in verses 5 and 6. Says, when Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? And he asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Now, let me take it aside for a minute and talk about a misconception that I hear a lot. If you've ever quoted this verse that God won't give you more than you can handle. God won't put too much more on me than I can handle. That is not a verse in the Bible. Because, in fact, if your week was like mine at all, you had a bunch of stuff on you that was more than you could handle. Stuff happens all the time that is more than you can handle. The verse you might be thinking of comes from 1 Corinthians 10:13 that says, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you're tempted, he'll also provide a way out so that you can endure it. So catch this real quick. God doesn't tempt you. When you're in a situation where you're tempted, he will be there with you, helping you have a way out, an opportunity, a decision. He won't let you be tempted beyond what you can handle. That's totally different than saying, Angie, you're going to have more on you than you can handle. And you say, no, the verse does not say he won't allow you to be tested or have more on you, because Paul, in fact, said, man, it's in my strength that I'm weak. Said, it's by his grace. His grace is sufficient. It's us saying, God, we know in this life you will allow us to have more on our shoulders than we can handle. You know why? So that we look to him. So we say, God, I can't handle this. And in our story today, when we talk about 10,000 people being fed by a little person's lunch, that's way more than that little person could handle. So I want to make sure you take that with you today, knowing that God is not there saying, I'm protecting you from trouble, so there's not more than you can handle. He's saying, there's going to be more than you can handle, but I'll be there with you. So let's continue. First piece of this puzzle is attitude. Attitude. These 5 pieces of a puzzle toward the miracle that happens in the story is attitude. Because I love hanging out with people that don't look at a situation and find problems. They look and try to find solutions. Same situation, same thing going on. They say, look at all the problems. So let's try to find solutions. And this isn't just a positive thinking type concept. This is a reality that what we think on will affect the way a path goes in a situation. So reading in John chapter 6, 7 through 9 says, Philip answered him, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. And another one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will they go among so many? And this is strange because in that society, kids were just totally, they really weren't even valued. They were just there to grow up and eventually be labor. But we'll even see later on in ministry, in Matthew 19, that people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples, they rebuked them. They said, get those kids back. So in this situation where there's this huge need, 10,000 people to feed, Jesus says, you feed them. One guy says, man, there's no way to feed them. So he's seeing problems. The other guy, though, he's seeing a potential solution where he says, well, when I look out here and see all the people who finished their lunch and some who's not pulling out of lunch, oh, there's a kid. There's a kid. He's got something in his lunchbox. Could that be the answer? That is so crazy. That is absurd to think that that could be a solution. But Andrew said, I'm not just looking for problems. I'm going to try to look for solutions. And so, in that passage with the kids, Jesus had said, hey, let the kids come to me. Don't hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven, man, it belongs to such as these. So Jesus was saying, guys, in a miracle situation, I might work through a kid. I might work for the person with no talent. I might work for the person that's thinking they're not worth anything. He says, don't discount the possibility of solutions. So when we're in a situation that might require a miracle, the first place we start is with our attitude. Are we looking at all the problems? Are we looking for solutions? Second piece, resources. Resources. It's as simple as saying, God, I'm in a mess. I need your help. And God whispers in your ear and says, what do you have? What do you bring to this? And a lot of times, I think we just need to step back when the problem looks so huge, it blocks everything else. And God says, what do you have? What have I given you in this situation? And in John 6, 8, 9 says, again, another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, he spoke up. He said, here's what we have. We got a boy. We got a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But man, how far can that go? And Jesus said, exactly. Look for solutions and tell me what you have. And let's go from there. So the third piece of the puzzle, expectancy. Expectancy, saying, okay, God, I don't have much in my situation, my financial crisis, my relationship issue, my job thing that I can't find a job or can't make it at my job, or the stress, the thing that's on me, I don't have much. And God says, look, what you have, let's recognize that, and then let's talk about it. Talk with God about it with an expectancy that he is going to do something with that. We see in verse 10, Jesus said, hey, have all the people sit down, get these 10,000 people to sit down. There's plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. It says about 5,000 men. We're saying about 10,000, 15,000 people. Jesus then took the loaves, he gave thanks, he distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. What Jesus did in this, there was thankfulness, there was anticipation. He was oozing expectancy, so that hopefully his disciples and the other people there got that, and they caught that. And like I talked about in week 1, remember this? Said, Jesus bends the laws of nature. I love that concept because I can't do that. I'm confined by the laws of nature, but Jesus says, I'm not. I can bend the laws of nature to fix what's going on in your situation. So he can still do that. He can still do that even for us. So the fourth piece of this puzzle is stewardship. Is stewardship, because you'll see in this story, they didn't waste anything. And I love that about the DNA of Vision Church. Because you look up here and see even our stage design, we've done it with micro resources, with macro creativity, and with no waste. We're taking palettes, we're using those. We're taking different things to design. I can't even explain all these things our creative team uses to design. And they're coming up with stuff, and we're making videos, and we're getting talent up here playing. Saying, God, we're not going to waste what you give us. We want to be good stewards, and Jesus modeled this. Verse 12 says, then when they all had enough to eat, Jesus said to the disciples, gather all the pieces that are left over. Don't just leave crumbs and trash, whatever. Gather all the pieces left over. Let nothing be wasted. They gathered them. They filled 12 baskets. That doesn't make sense. It started with this. Now you got leftovers of 12 baskets with the pieces of the barley loaves left over by those who'd eaten. And the fifth piece of the puzzle is perspective. It's perspective, because God has a plan, and usually so do we. And if you're like me, usually my plan is not the same as God's plan. And that's what we see here in the people that are there that day. Verse 14 says, after the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world. Jesus, knowing they'd intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. You get it? They're saying, look at the miracle he did. Man, let's just hook our wagon to him and have him just do miracles. That's what we need, a king who can do miracles. He's going to fix it all. And he said, that's not really why I came. I came for relationship. I came that you would see the love that the Father has for you. I'm going to do some miracles to meet your needs and to break you out of the mundane and to show you my power, but that's not the type of king I'm going to be. And the people are like, be that type of king. And I know I say that. I said, Jesus, fix this one and fix that one and fix that. He said, that's not my plan. That's not the way I'm going to do it. And a verse that I'll quote often, Isaiah 55, I love that God, he has a different perspective. He says in Isaiah 55, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." I say, God, I want to think like that more. Help me think like that more. And so I appreciate that God gives us an opportunity here to teach visually and do something to hopefully expand that. So I want to take the next couple of minutes and bring up Chuck and Julian. You guys come on up here. Because I want to pretend that what if Jesus was coming today? And you guys just kind of take a spot right here. If Jesus was coming, say down to Forest View High School, and at a big football game down there, they might get 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, but people had heard this guy doing miracles was coming. So they're packing in 8, 9, 10,000, maybe 15,000 people. And Chuck and Julian, they're all on that. They're saying, we're going to see this guy. We are going. And the good thing is, sweet Julie, who was helping our women's event, she had packed him some lunch, and she sent some lunch with him. So they go over there to Forest View, and they're hanging out, and there's teaching, and there's all kind of stuff going on, and they're loving it. And they'd eaten their lunch, and give me the creative liberty that we're actually our miracle piece today is going to be chocolate, because hey, everybody loves chocolate. So let's just pretend that Jesus was down at Forest View teaching. He'd been there a couple hours, kind of heading toward the end. He can tell he's kind of losing people. He said, guys, we need some chocolate, because if we get some chocolate into the hands of the people, they'll eat that, they'll be happy, they'll feel good, they'll listen for the last little bit. Man, that's a novel idea. Okay, so anyways, these guys are out there at Forest View. They got this cooler, and so Julie had packed it, and I tell you, it's so cool, so creative. There's even Think Vision. I mean, that's a bag somebody gave us. I love that. So you guys got your lunch. Say you've already eaten your lunch. You went through some of the, well, I guess you went through the waters. We got it late. But good news is they still got their dessert left. Because Julie was thinking, she said, I know my guys, they love chocolate. Julian, he likes the kind of the regular ones. And Chuck, well, he's a nut, so he likes Good Bar and Crackle and all that. So they got their candy. And so Jesus is up there teaching. He says, guys, look, we could really use some chocolate. Anybody got any chocolate? And, of course, Philip, he's like, chocolate? Man, how are we going to buy chocolate for 10,000 people? I mean, that would take so much money. And Andrew says, oh, wait a second. I see these guys sitting, third row back, and I think they had some candy. Well, Chuck, where's your candy? He ate his candy. Okay. Thank goodness Julian, though, was sitting there listening intently to Jesus while Chuck was checking scores. And Julian does something crazy, and he says, you can have my candy. And he puts it back in the bag and puts it back in his lunch bag and says he can have it. Now, let's see, where's Wayne at? Wayne, come on up here, and Wayne Gamble, now playing the part of Jesus, will enter from stage left. Okay, so Wayne, thank you. Now, so Julian willingly takes his candy, his leftovers, and remember the pieces of the puzzle in this. Attitude? Problem? Solution. Okay. We got a solution in the young guy. So that's good. But so the attitude's right. And he's saying, well, I'm going to take it, and I'm going to, and actually, Julian, just even symbolically, man, you take your lunch, and you're going to go up to the side of the stage, and you're going to give it to Jesus. All right? So you're going to give that to him, and he's going to take it, and before he even opens it, just imagine what the Son of God's thinking. He looks out at these thousands of people, and whenever they said, who's got some candy left? And, and Dave Shook's like, no, I don't have candy left. And on this side, you guys are laughing, and the teenagers are all like, man, we finished our candy before even our lunch, so their candy's gone. But Julian is like, oh, man, Jesus took what I had. And he kind of had this expectancy to him of like, something could happen here. Something could happen here. And you're good. So Jesus takes it, and before he even opens it, he just bends down, and remember what we saw? He just thanked God for it. So he bowed for it and said, hey, Father, thank you for what you've given us. Thank you that you gave us something. You took what we have, a little bit of what we have, and then he opened it up, and he did the things that Jesus does, and he pulls this bag out, and Julian's like, whoa, that looks like our bag. And in fact, Jesus opened it up, and I don't know what Jesus would do with empty water bottles, but he'd be like, that wasn't part of the miracle. And Jesus said, that wasn't supposed to be in there, but that's okay, guys. But Jesus would take this bag, and in the bag, Julian's like, wait a second, what is going on? And there'd be like handfuls of candy. And yes, you would be like this. And people in the back row were waking up saying, what? Jesus has got handfuls of candy from this kid, had 2 pieces of candy. And he'd put it in the bag, and he'd say, guys, come here. And he'd give him the bag. And what we're going to do, actually, in our closing song, is these guys are going to share this blessing with you. So in just a second, they're going to come down the floor, one on that end and one on that end, and you'll pass the bag all the way across and move down and all the way across so that each of you will touch this bag. I want you guys to take positions for a minute. Don't start passing out yet, but just go ahead and stand over there. And you wonder what it felt like, not at Forest View, but out in the field that day, when everybody started doing like you're doing, like, look, really? We're gonna get to touch the bag, the basket, the bread, the fish. We're gonna get to eat. I'm so hungry. We're gonna get to eat, and you guys are like, chocolate? We're gonna get some chocolate in church, really? I mean, I know like they get to eat some. But really, we're gonna get some. The students were like, 2? No, 1. You get 1. You get 1. And we laugh. But Jesus says, I'm still bending the laws of nature. I'm still doing that. And when you're in your miracle situation, when you're so desperate, you say, God, I need a miracle. Don't ever forget the day that you got a piece of chocolate. Because I'm telling you, the Julian from 2,000 years ago, he never forgot the day that Jesus took his little bit and fed 10,000 with it. And I guarantee you, people that were there too, they didn't forget it. But it was interesting. Who else was there that day? We don't know. But as you look through the rest of the Gospels and you read about the Pharisees, a bunch of them were there that day. They didn't catch it. The rich young ruler, this guy later on in the Bible who Jesus says, give it all up. He says, I can't give it all up. And Julian said, I gave it all up. All he had was 2 pieces of chocolate. But this rich young ruler, maybe he was there that day. And days or weeks later, Jesus said to him, will you give it all up? And he said, I can't do that. I can't do that. And maybe there was a blind person there that day. He said, can you heal me? And Jesus said, not today. But we'll talk about that next Sunday. When we say, God, why did this happen? And some people walking away that day saying, why did I get healed today? Jesus said, look at it from my perspective. My ways are higher than your ways. I know you need a miracle. I'll work in your life to do miraculous things.